Welcome, and thanks for joining us on our Friends in Wonder Thanksgiving episode. I'm Vince Kern, and on behalf of co-host Joe Luther, we're grateful you hit the play button and joined us this week as we focus on gratitude and gratitude journals. As always, we appreciate the shares, likes, and feedback, and you can reach us at friendsinwonder.com or by our show's email, talk@friendsinwonder.com. And now, on with the festivities.
Well, hey, Vince, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, it is Thanksgiving week, isn't it?
Yes, it sure is. And I'm excited about our episode today, but, it's also the holiday season, for crying out loud. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I heard my first Frosty the Snowman on my way over here as I stopped in a store, and I was kind of surprised because I thought, why haven't I heard it earlier?
Well, that's what happens with the holidays. They always kind of catch us by surprise, right? We're living in our denial that it's a ways off, and suddenly you hear a song or whatever.
Yeah, but it's not Frosty the Snowman time. It's Thanksgiving time.
Well, yeah, some people believe that you're not supposed to turn your Christmas lights on until after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Do you believe that?
Well, I do, but I don't really have any judgment about people. I know my daughter loves to listen to Christmas music in the middle of the summer. So
God bless her. She's got the spirit all year long.
Oh, yeah. She's a walking Yuletide joy. That is for sure. But anyhow, no, and in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're grateful for recently. Like, for instance, we just got notification from our podcast platform that we've had 1,250 downloads so far.
Yeah.
Total, which maybe it doesn't sound like a lot to those big influencers out there that get millions, but we're pretty impressed, and not only impressed but grateful that many people want to push play and listen to us knuckleheads.
Yeah, true. That's very true. And interestingly enough, I was looking at the statistics, and we've had downloads from literally all over the world.
Right. Yeah. The yoga podcast.
Yeah. That was popular in many, many countries, not just in countries you would think that it would be, but Europe and South America and Asia. I mean, you name it.
A lot from India. That would be the one you'd be more expecting. But yeah, I mean, it turns out people like to listen to podcasts about yoga, apparently.
Yeah. And, we don't know who they are per se. We get information on the cities and the countries, but it's interesting. I recall pre-COVID, there was a gentleman, his name is Three Trees.
Oh, yeah. The great shamanic, sound shamanic healer. Yeah.
Yes, he does a great sound bath healing, and he does it professionally in many venues. But when COVID hit, he decided to, learn how to do it, which I think is amazing. But he did a live Facebook sound bath I think he started doing it on Tuesday nights, or was it Thursdays?
Thursdays, I think. I remember you telling me about it.
And I got to tell you, man, it's really helped me get through those dark days.
Yeah. And there was a commonality.
Yeah. And, to get to the point of people listening from all over the world, he had people listening from all over the world. And in the comment section on Facebook, which of course was live, you could just feel the unity. So, I don't know who the 1,250 people are, absolutely, who pushed the button, but we're grateful for them. And we're also grateful for everybody here in the United States as well. It's been a great experience.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for what we're doing, Vince. It was a blast. A few days ago, Vince and I did our first interviews on the street, which is going to be in an upcoming podcast on generations. We went to a University of Michigan tailgate because we wanted to find a variety of age groups of people to interview. And boy, we found a variety of humans.
Yeah, variety of humans. If you want to talk about a collection of humans, go to a college football tailgate. We did over 20 some interviews, and they weren't just, one questions. They were 20 some discussions, and it was really a grateful thing in the sense that we're able to get out there. People are very eager to talk.
Yeah, it turns out that people at tailgates don't mind having a microphone put in front of their face.
No, we had a couple of people. Two guys walked up and said, "We're ready for our interview," and we hadn't even approached them. So we interviewed him.
Yeah, no, it was great. And shout out to all those people. We're very grateful for that
Yes.
as well.
So we'll be hearing about that in an upcoming episode. And, as far as the podcast goes, we've got a lot to be grateful for. But we were talking about this, and, Joe, you raised up a great question, which is, you're talking about how we take things for granted and not being grateful enough or not having the time.
In the spirit of Thanksgiving, no better time than the Thanksgiving week to think about what we're grateful for. And kind of as a corollary to that is, why do we take things for granted? And I know it sounds a little judgy, but I know for a fact that we all, or not, I should never say all, but too many of us take too much for granted.
I'm raising my hand over here.
Right. And me as well. And I think we were talking about that as part of this episode. And, you and I were kind of wondering, why is that? Friends in wonder tend to wonder. And we wonder, why is there so much taking for granted these days? Is it part of our DNA, or is it part of our society or culture?
Right. And that prompted a lot of thinking. A lot of times when I think about cultural anthropological things, I always go right back to the hunters and gatherers, right?
Right. Well, that's what we love to do.
Right. Did they take their existence for granted? And I think, well, they sure had a lot more of some things that they had to focus on, and they had a lot less of the things that we have to focus on today, in terms of distractions or taking for things to take for granted. And I got to thinking, well, it's not just that far back, but even a few hundred years ago, where a family, had a farm and everybody worked on the farm and everybody was together and everything was about sustenance, and, they had less to take for granted. You mentioned a glass of cold water even. Yeah,
no, when we were discussing it, I thought, just because I tend to think that we have so many creature comforts, that it too often, we take things for granted. And so to contrast that, people 100 years ago didn't understand or didn't have even the opportunity for a glass of cold water. And
unless you went down to the spring and drank it down there.
Well, yeah, not everybody, so I guess the point is, we have so much, and going back to the hunter-gatherers days, I'm sure they were grateful when they were able to eat. And today, all we have to do, most of us, is just go into the kitchen and find something to eat.
Right.
So, we can take that for granted, a full stomach. We can take a glass of cold water for granted. There's so many things that we have at our fingertips that other people, before us didn't have. So that's part of it. I think that's part of the cultural thing. And then you had talked about, and I think that's very important too, is that sometimes we don't focus on what we have as much because we're too busy doing and not, taking enough time to smell the roses, as they say.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Thanksgiving dinner just as an example. In that farm family I was talking about earlier, they probably worked for weeks to get everything, on the farm ready, a little bit here, a little bit there, and it was all self-contained. And we've got to run out and spend hours, shopping and getting the perfect ingredients and getting the right things, and everything has to be, right. And so do we spend more time? Is it a distraction to being grateful?
Well, it can be a distraction. I think that can be part of the reason why we, go through a whole Thanksgiving season without really taking a lot of time to give thanks. And, and it's certainly, I think it's very valuable to have this holiday, just like New Year's resolutions and whatnot, get us to focus on certain things. This is a great time to focus on what today's topic is, and that is gratitude. And, we already had an episode recently on grieving with gratitude. And obviously gratitude is a big part of our DNA. We love, we find, grace and gratitude.
As hard as it is for us sometimes to get through our own, get besides ourselves, that is a goal,
Yeah, I mean, it's not always easy. And this idea of taking things for granted is kind of the opposite of giving gratitude.
Right.
And you and I were talking about what would be a good way to, celebrate Thanksgiving. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we shared our experiences with the gratitude journals that we have kept from time to time in our life?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to, to be grateful. Some people are born with it. You meet these people that walk around and their biggest trait is they're grateful for everything. And they're wonderful people and you love them. But sometimes you look at them and go, how the heck can you just be that grateful all the time? And,
I'm always amazed by those people, sometimes a little jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it can be a trait and it's a great trait. And it can also be like, it can be a mood and you're just in that, you're out in nature and that gratitude for nature just comes to you, envelops you, or it can be an emotion. It can be, hey, somebody just said something really nice to you or did something unexpected for you. And that gratitude of emotion comes up, but it's still a practice. And as hard as I've tried keeping a gratitude journal over the years, I haven't always been successful, even though I recognize it's still one of the best things I can do.
Yeah. Well, let's first talk about what a gratitude journal is. But I guess I do want to finish on what you were saying. And that's this idea that it isn't a chore, because when it becomes a chore or a to-do, sometimes it's,
well, it's when you get that advice to say, hey, you should keep a daily journal.
Right. And then
I have to do this every day now.
Yeah. And certainly there may be good things that come out of doing it, but it's also an opportunity for you to feel like, you're not doing your job or it's a chore. And that's not what the idea of this is at all, because our personal experiences are that gratitude journals, or the concept of giving attention to gratitude, is something that can be a part of your life in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be daily.
Right.
It can be weekly. It can be annually.
It doesn't have to be digital. It doesn't have to be on paper.
It doesn't have to be in a gratitude journal. It can be anywhere you want it.
Right.
But the idea is giving attention to gratitude, and what does that do for you?
Right. Now, my personal experience has been that if I sit down and I tend to, like, for instance, I'm grateful for my wife. She's just a wonderful person. And I think she's got a very high gratitude trait. She wakes up every morning happy and joyful.
Always positive.
Yeah. And I'm a little grumpy in the morning. So, but
I've seen that.
Yeah. But you know what? I've learned to be grateful for her gratitude trait in the morning. But for me, it's a hard thing to do daily. So I'll write down, I'll say, oh, I'm grateful. I'm always grateful every day at the end of the day for my wife. She's the greatest thing in my life. And then it's like, okay, I wrote down yesterday, I'm grateful for Sheila and, da-da-da-da. And then I thought, well, I just keep writing down, I'm grateful for her. Maybe I should start talking about why I'm grateful for her, or identifying to myself at least what the specific things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole idea, I guess, of a gratitude journal is this kind of forcing yourself in a way to specifically get out of your zone of taking things for granted and give attention to the many good things in your life and why you are grateful for them. And in the practice of doing it in a journal kind of just is more of a discipline to get you to do it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But it isn't necessary. But when you do that, do it with some purpose. And that's what you're getting at, is this idea of, not just, oh, I'm grateful for Sheila. Well, yeah, I'm grateful for Sheila when she wakes up in a happy mood, or I'm grateful for Sheila when I'm in a grumpy mood, she pulls me out of it. Or I'm grateful for, my automobile because when I turn it on, it keeps me warm in the winter. There are so many things that you can be grateful for, and they can be, about so many different things.
Yeah, they don't always have to be the big things in your life. They can be the little things in your life. I was driving home the other night. Of course, it's dark now, much earlier, and it was snowing and cold, and not too many people out. It was beautiful, even though it was dark. And I thought, wow, this is really pretty amazing. I'm moving down this road at a speed that is pretty fast, that several hundred years ago people wouldn't be traveling at. And I've got these wonderful lights in my car, and it's not a great car or a new car. It's just the lights at night were like little, I hate to say it, Christmas lights inside of my car, but I was grateful for it. And I thought, wow, I just am grateful for this particular moment. I had 2 Dairy Queen thick and frosty, not thick and frosties, extremes that I was also in my car. So
who wouldn't be grateful for that? Wow.
So, but it doesn't have to be the big things, right? It can be the little things.
No, right. And I think that's the point of what we wanted to get at today, is that not everybody is familiar with a gratitude journal, and we're certainly not telling anybody they have to do it. But what we want to do is talk about the benefits of a gratitude journal and maybe how to do it if you want to dabble with it. And it doesn't have to be in writing. It can be something that you're doing when you're in your quiet times. It can be something that you're doing when you're driving, like Vince was. But to do it with a sense of purpose, and then we can discuss what the benefits are.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to do it with prompting, which is, I am grateful for, and it can be, people, it can be objects, it can be places or experiences. And then you throw that why in there at the end, and you can do that while you're driving. I'm grateful for, my mother. I'm grateful for my son, or I'm grateful, whatever it is and why, or I'm grateful for being alive in America at a time when yada, yada, whatever it is that moves you.
You can categorize it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the trip I took with my dad before he died. Any of those things that are, valuable memories that you have. And when you do that, what happens?
Yeah.
What happens when you're giving attention to your gratitude?
One of the things I found helpful is what you were just talking about, in the sense of, identifying what you're grateful for can be an overwhelming task if you're really got a lot to be grateful for, right? So how do you sort it out? And then it's like our business mind or whatever says, I got to prioritize this stuff. So I have to be really grateful for the big things, and the little things go down here and blah, blah, blah. But you showed me an example of where I think you had broken it out into some categories where it was like nature, family, creativity. And underneath each one of those, I think you called it bulleted journaling or something.
Yeah,
to that
prompting.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole point is do what's comfortable for you, but challenge yourself to do it in a way, and you said it, intentional. And that was one of my big shortcomings, until I realized that if you categorize it, you can always then you can think about those things, and then it becomes a creative process.
Yeah. And then suddenly your attention, it comes to things that you may have been taking for granted, and you're giving gratitude. And so what I guess the question I'm asking, not rhetorically, Vince, I'm actually asking this question out loud, is what happens when we live in gratitude? Right. What happens when you live in gratitude, Vince? What is your experience?
Oh, my experience is that I have much better experiences. For one, I mean, when I am living in gratitude and truly sitting back and sort of watching life being connected to it, but also not reacting to it in a way that, I do take myself out. It has to do for me with being present, being in the now,
being connected,
accepting for people who they are at the moment they're in, and not trying to change them and all that. Now, it isn't easy, and I'm not the best at it, but it's the goal.
I think you nailed it. I think what you touched on there is this idea of living in the now.
Yeah. Smelling the roses, right?
Smelling the roses is living in the now is not walking by roses. Living in the now is noticing the roses as you're walking by.
And you don't even have to stop.
Yeah.
As long as you smell them and notice them, as long as your awareness is that they're there.
Yeah. Then that's the same as giving gratitude. And not only are you living in the now, you're living more connected to your environment and to others. Because too often what we're doing is we're taking things for granted that are near and dear to us. And that is in a way disconnecting us from the joy of either that relationship or that feeling of presence in our environment. So that's the whole idea. When you use these tools of giving gratitude, and they can be, again, like we said, they can be anything. They can be written. It can be just something that you do mentally, or there are apps. There literally are apps that you can download that are gratitude journal type apps. I think one is called Presently. It depends on the platform you're on. One is called Presently, and the other one
Reflectively.
Yeah, exactly. Reflectly and presently.
There's probably hundreds of others, because it is a big area, and I think humans are evolving back to wanting to express gratitude, and I think more people may be journaling these days. I don't know, but my hunch is that there is an emphasis placed on the healthy benefits of doing that.
Yeah. And but the other thing is, I think from my experience having kept a gratitude journal, is I've too often been very enthusiastic about doing it on Thanksgiving Day and having the intention to do it every day or every week or whatever it is. And sometimes it just, it gets away from me. I stop doing it.
Yeah.
And this isn't about that. Like, this isn't a failure thing. Like, if you undertake to do regular journaling or giving regular attention to your gratitudes and you slip off, it's okay. Like, even if you do it once, like if you just do it after this podcast and don't do it ever again, that is a ripple effect, that is good for the universe.
Yeah.
And so this isn't a chore. This isn't, an opportunity for negative self-talk because you didn't do it right, or you didn't do it enough, or you didn't do it regularly enough. This is a tool to give you joy and to kind of change your, our modernistic way of walking through life without recognizing all the things that we have to be grateful for.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that worked for me. I mentioned a few things that didn't work for me. One thing that worked for me was a guy said, and I did this intuitively occasionally, but somebody drove it home, and he said, and it's a very simple statement. He said, when you sleep, you're going into your subconscious mind, which is controlling itself, and you have no control over where it goes, except if you spend your last 15 or 20 minutes before you go to bed with negative self-talk and wallowing in what happened today or what didn't happen, or being stressed out about a work situation that you have no control over, then your brain is going to take that as a direction of where you want to go in your subconscious sleep. And you sleep, if you're lucky, for 8 hours. And so that's what your brain's going to be doing.
Absolutely. That was going on during the pandemic. A lot of people were going to bed with terrible news on their mind.
Yeah. And he said, instead of doing that, spend the last 15 or 20 minutes in gratitude, thinking about, and we've just talked about all the different things and ways to do it.
Sure.
And now you're telling your brain, hey, this is where I want to go. So, help me out here. And it'll still work out all those crazy things on its own, but you might wind up dreaming about something pleasant and waking up more refreshed in the morning.
I think you probably will.
Yeah. And that's been something that's worked for me.
Well, no, that's interesting because I think you brought up a good point, because some people do their gratitudes in the morning when they wake up, and it kind of sets them off in a happy mood. You mentioned you do that with Sheila in the morning, or she brings that out in you, which is great. Some people do it right before they go to sleep. Some people do both. Some people do it in the middle of the day. It's all good.
And some people do it 5 or 6 times a day.
One thing I think is also worth noting, though, is it's always easy to give gratitude when you're in a good mood or when you're in a good place.
Right.
Sometimes the most difficult time for giving gratitude is when you're in a dark place, when something bad has happened in your life, or you've gotten some bad news, or maybe even after, like we talked about with our grieving and gratitude, maybe even after the loss of a loved one. It's very difficult to start counting your gratitudes when you're feeling really bad.
It's hard to put that meat in the stew when...
Yeah, but that's probably the best time.
Yeah.
Because there's always something to be grateful for, no matter how dark your situation is. And when you take time to start inventorying all the things that you have to be grateful for, it brings you back.
Yeah, I think this is a robust discussion of journaling. And, for me, it rekindles the desire to find a good format and, add it back into my repertoire, because frankly, I have not been doing the written gratitude journals in the last several months. And Thanksgiving is a great time because it's a holiday. You've got some more time to spend. So rekindle that journal. I'm motivated to do that. I'm gonna pick it back up and find a good format and use the journal as a tool. And in the meantime, just grateful for being able to do this, to share this with you listeners. And we're grateful for you.